Well, hello and good morning. Well, that is, if you all can actually hear me. This will be an interesting test. Going to give it a few seconds for it to actually roll into the stream for the people who are watching. Let's see. Can I be heard? Good morning. I got the okay. Everything's good. Would you look at that? Technology sometimes can be your friend. Oh, we're gonna get rid of some of these little alert boxes that we put up here, though. They don't look like they're gonna work perfectly for us. There we go. Not to mention, I can see all that right here on the screen. Oh, this is great. I can see you guys commenting. Oh, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. All right. So, hey, let's get started. Good morning. Welcome. It is coffee time with the ferret. Hope you guys have your coffee and your doggy, for those of you that have a doggy. So we're going to go ahead and get started and do our stretches to get everything nice and opened up. I don't know about you guys, but with this whole coronavirus thing going on, I've been sitting a lot more than I'm used to. And I tell you, my hip flexors, they are really, really starting to feel it. So what we're going to do this morning to start is we're going to do an Arthur stretch. Now, the stretch is a little aggressive, especially if you don't already have a good amount of flexibility. But you can modify this by simply just coming into a lunge position, keeping your foot on the ground. What we're going to do is we're going to get our toe box back against the wall. We're going to engage our glutes and our hips. And we're just going to start to push and stretch into all those muscles in the front of the leg. You see what happens when we end up sitting for 6 to 8 hours in a day. Those muscles are just in this constantly flexed state. And after that 6 to 8 hours is over, they just don't want to let go anymore. Oh, so we got to do things like this. There we go. Get the back up. Now, again, remember, if you're following along with these stretches, you don't need to get your foot up against the wall. You don't need to put your knee as far back. You just need to stretch out the front of your leg. And you can do that from a lunge position. I find that reaching the same arm can help as well, getting everything to move up deeper into the psoas muscle. But the main point is just opening that flexor back up. I also like to explore a little bit when I'm doing my stretches. For instance, right now, keeping my hips nice and tight, I'm just kind of very gently, internally, externally rotating them. What's going on there, where the tension builds, where it relaxes. There we go, that's opening up nice. All right, and the next thing we're gonna do some figure 4 stretching. Get our hips nice and open. Normally I'd do a pigeon stretch for this, but I'm feeling kind of lazy this morning. No, lazy is not the right word. I'm feeling like I need to just be a little bit more of a relaxed position. Just gonna go ahead and cross that leg over into a figure 4. Reach through and around, rest my head, neck, and shoulders. And I'm just gonna start to use this leg as leverage against my hip. Ooh, there it is. Once I've got that position, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use my hip muscles to try and push my knee ever so slightly away from me. So I'm utilizing all the muscles here and pushing my knee that way. Once I've built tension for a few seconds, I'm going to relax it. And then in theory, I should be able to stretch a little bit further. Tension, stretch. There we go. We're going to move it over to the other side. I'm just doing each of our stretches for about 45 seconds today. Just enough to open up and get everything feeling. Now, of course, for the individual, the amount of time you're going to need to stretch is really subjective to you. Because what you're doing here is you're not actually, no, that's not right. you are stretching the tissue, but more what you're doing is you're giving the central nervous system the stimulation it needs to recognize and understand that it doesn't have to hold on to the tissue so tightly, that it can actually let it relax. And that's where we tend to run into problems. It isn't that the muscle is incapable of stretching to its full range of motion. It's that your brain has been convinced that to do so would be incredibly unsafe. All right, we're going to do one of my favorites next, big extensions. So to make this one easier on yourself, leg on the ground. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lot of distance between my knee and my front foot. I'm going to grab the ground with my foot and my hand so we get that grounding principle. I'm going to bring my back leg into extension, and I'm going to open the torso. Shoulder blade is rotated down in towards my spine. I'm going to thread that needle, opening the hips as we go, driving our foot into the ground. Good, good, good. Oh. Now, when you're doing this one, make sure you don't let your hips follow the stretch. I'm going to keep everything pretty locked down and isolated so you can really focus on the movement. Go. Get that foot nice and grounded again. Feel the energy from the floor. Hand nice and grounded. Feel the energy from the floor. Bringing that back leg into extension. And we open up. Thread the needle. Ooh. There we go. Just a couple more. Get those hips to open up a little better. Oh, there it is. Ooh. Okay. Oh, got some blood pumping now. A little bit more awake. Good morning, Nicole. Thank you so much. Wow, got quite a few people hanging out with us this morning. How's everybody doing? You guys doing well on this Saturday? Oh, no, I am. At least as best I can. Oh, I tell you, with everything that's going on, it's so easy for anxiety and stress and depression to just really crank up on the dial. I haven't really slept well the last few nights. Can't really put my finger on why, but given the circumstances and everything that's going on, it does make sense that stress is probably playing a pretty good role in all of that. So I guess what I want to talk about with you guys today is managing stress, finding your own ways to get through the day, to work with what's going on, and really just kind of focusing on your circles of control. So that's actually a really good topic and lesson point for anyone who's never thought of or heard of or really even discussed circles of control, circles of influence. They go by a few different names, but if I can give you an example, what you're looking at is you're looking at the circles of everything that happens around us. All right, so that's kind of like the big, broad, over encompassing thing. These are the world events, natural disasters, not just bad things, good things too. But these are things that we have absolutely no control over. We can't dictate when they happen, how they happen, or who they happen to. Oh, music. Music is a very good one. Just commenting on Nicole's comment. If you do enjoy music, especially, it doesn't really matter what the genre is. If it helps you, just kind of get taken away, absolutely, music is great. Sometimes when I'm making breakfast, I'll just put Alexa on one of my favorite stations and just kind of dance around and hum and sing while cooking away. But back to our circles of influence. So we have the big over-encompassing circle, the things that happen that we have absolutely no control over, no influence over, nothing. Now, just inside that circle, we have the circle of influence. So the circle of influence, that's going to be more things that we can have a gentle touch in, and we can help their outcome, but we can't necessarily direct how those things are happening. What's going on. Like for example, let's say someone's having a bad day. Well, we can influence their mood, but we can't control it. We could tell them a funny joke, or we could try and do something nice for them, or we could be a little pain in the butt, and we could exacerbate that feeling, that mood, that sensation. But that's external. Looking at things that are internal, that we have direct influence over, our moods, we have influence over that, absolutely. Have you ever woken up one morning and instantly got out of bed and stubbed your toe? And then all of a sudden, from that point on, it just seemed like the whole day started spiraling out of control. One bad thing happened after another, and then another and another. And before you know it, you get to the end of the day and you're exhausted from all of the bad things that just kept following you around all day. Well, it wasn't that the bad things were following you around. It's that your mindset, your focus had been shifted to seek out, to search, to find, to identify all of those little things that could be contributing to your bad day. Now, on the flip side, have you ever encountered a situation where something bad happened, or, stubbed your toe, and you just kind of shrugged it off and you thought, well, stupid things happen. I was just being a little clumsy. And then that's it. Kind of isolated incident. The rest of the day moves on. So within our circles of influence, what we also find is actualization. We find that the things that we are focused on, the things that we keep in the forefront of our mind, it isn't necessarily that we create objects in front of us, but when you're looking for something, you're going to find it eventually. That's really what actualization is. That's when, somebody says, you have to manifest your destiny, or, what is that expression? The power of manifestation. I'm kind of at a loss for words for it, but it isn't that they necessarily mean you're literally going to make things appear in front of you. But when your mindset is focused on those things, you are going to find them more frequently. Think of a Where's Waldo book. Well, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd probably never find Waldo. But you're specifically looking for that little dude in blue jeans with his striped shirt and his little poofball hat. And sure enough, you look around and you see a whole lot of things that look like they could be him. Same principle. But then eventually you do find him. But anyways, so moving on to our circles of influence and really focusing on that. So the big circle, things we can't control, things we have absolutely no business worrying about other than just being prepared, planning. The inside circle, the things we can control, how we react to situations, how we react to people, how we react to the big things in that over-encompassing circle. Those are all things that we can directly control. And when you start to abdicate the control you have on that most inner circle, that's when stress and anxiety and despair really start to kind of take a stranglehold of you. Suddenly, you're no longer responsible for the things that are immediately happening to you, and it's just up to the universe. It's like, nope, today's just a bad day. That's just the way it's going to be, and this is life. Well, we can't control the fact that we're in a pandemic. We can't control the fact that we're being asked to practice social distancing. We can't control the fact that a ton of brick and mortars have closed down. We can't control the fact that most of us are not able to work or not allowed to work. But what we can control is how we choose to react to it, to deal with it. We can, for instance, try to find things to keep ourselves busy. If you're in a situation where you're currently unemployed, but you've got all this free time on your hands, well, maybe that's a good reason or a good excuse to start working on some project that you'd been putting off because you just didn't have time. Or maybe it's a good excuse to start working on a new hobby, or maybe even picking up an old hobby. Looking for those things that you used to do when you had more time, before we became adults. I'm still trying to figure that whole thing out. Oh, man. And of course, I do want to let you guys know that the way this is really going to go, tangents are going to happen frequently. I love breaking into tangents and random thoughts. So one of the things that I've been noticing is it feels like a lot of the responsibility in who has to take the adult mentality has very much shifted. I don't know how many of you out there, have parents who are in their 70s, 80s, maybe even late 60s. But it seems like it's really hard to convince them that the responsible things to do right now do include social distancing, not going out to the stores constantly, not traveling for work. But it seems like that's not the mentality. That's not the case. And I find this a lot, talking with a lot of my friends who are in my demographic, my age bracket, that we're all sharing the same strife with trying to convince our parents to sit still and not go out into the world and not, and not, oh, goodness. Yeah, I lost my train of thought with that tangent. Circles of control. That's where we were at. Things we can control, things we can't control. I can't control my parents. Love them to death, but I can't control them. So I just try to gently remind them that I want them to be around, and I don't want either of them to end up with this sickness, and I won't be able to visit them in the hospital. Or, I mean, God forbid, if you end up losing a loved one during this time, you can't even bury them. They're being taken care of there on site. You don't get to say goodbye. You don't get to be around them. So anyways, happier thoughts. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to use this time that you have. I want you to use these situations. I want you to use what's going on as a reason to focus more on the things you can control and just kind of start to let go a little bit of the things that you can't. And I don't mean completely disregard them, because that's no way to live either. There's order and there's chaos, and somewhere in between, that's where we have our harmony. If you live completely in chaos land and you live by your whims, nothing is planned, everything's to chance, well, that can be very stressful. If you try to plan and control everything, well, that's also going to be stressful. So you have to find that happy balance somewhere in the middle. So some of the things that we can do to help keep our stress down, somebody had mentioned music. Music is great. Listening to music, making music, just feeling it, being in the moment, and dancing around. Because I mean, who's going to be watching us dance in our kitchen? But I'm curious. Anybody else have some good things that they share? Things that help you manage your stress? One of my things is I'll take my dog for a really long walk. Not necessarily have a set destination in mind, but just getting outside into the fresh air and exposure to sunlight. Obviously, social distancing. But there's a lot to be said about being outside as well. We need sunlight. We need fresh air. That absolutely plays a huge impact on our mental state, and our immune systems and our health in general. So I definitely do urge you guys, maybe not today, since we have 4 to 5 inches of snow outside and it's, almost May. But when you can, on the days that it is nice, you don't need to be completely relegated to your home. Get out and take a walk, even if it's just 5, 10, 15 minutes. Scope out some stuff around your neighborhood. Maybe check out one of the local hiking trails. Reconnect with nature. I mean, you're never going to have a better excuse. You're never going to have a more forced time to reevaluate what you do with your time. I mean, we can't go out to the bars. We can't, congregate with our friends in large gatherings and whatnot. So this is a good time to reconnect with ourselves. Oh, looks like alarm puppy has been set off. So I guess the thoughts that I want to leave you guys with today is I would like for you to take these opportunities to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with nature, reconnect with a hobby, reconnect with a passion. And remember that we can't control what's going on, but we can control ourselves and we can control how we react to things. And I plan on being here every Saturday for the foreseeable future. We'll have dialogues, we'll have discussions, we'll have lectures. I've got a great whiteboard behind me. I plan on doing tons of drawings and demonstrations. We'll do a little bit of stretching every morning too. So please, I always encourage you to join along with that. Learn some of my favorite stretches that help me open everything up and get me prepared for each day. But on that note, I'm just going to kind of leave it open for a minute or two. Does anybody have any questions or topics that they want to dive into regarding what we've kind of been discussing this morning? Oh, here we go. We've got some other really good suggestions being thrown out. Meditation. That is a very, and it's one that is very subjective practice. You can do your own thing with it. It never has to be. It doesn't have to be what you necessarily think of, what Hollywood has kind of portrayed it to be. Meditation can actually be something as simple as just getting lost in your own thoughts while walking through the woods. Obviously sticking to the trails so you don't end up lost in the woods. But I know that oftentimes when I'm taking a shower, I'm actually meditating without even realizing it, just kind of, letting the rhythm of the water hit you and not trying to necessarily be in control of what your thoughts are doing, letting them wander, letting them roll, letting them move from one thing to the next, not really holding on to anything in particular. Driving and how we react to other drivers. That's very good. That's very interesting. I really do think of myself as a very peaceful, a very collected person. But I gotta say, even I'm not above the occasional road rage. I will tend to make comments and, yell out when somebody does a boneheaded move on the road that puts my life or other people's lives in danger, as if they can hear me or understand me or know what's going on. So it's one of those things like, well, who are you doing it for? Is it for you? Is it for your passengers? Is it for the other person? Because, well, they don't know. They can't hear you. And I always like to think that when I'm that person that accidentally does something boneheaded and, you try to do that whole, like, oh, I'm so sorry. I hope that people see that. I hope that people know that and understand that. But then I think what, my reaction is when I see things like that, I think, oh yeah, they're probably yelling about me in their car right now. So actually I'd say probably driving around, being more aware of your reactions to what's going on the road around you, that actually could be very good practice for recognizing where your circles of influence and where your circles of control lie. So food for thought, something to consider next time you are driving around. I mean, granted, there's not a ton of traffic these days, but, eventually, someday, we'll be there again. Going through old photos and reminiscing about old memories. That's a fun one too. Actually, can't think of the last time I dug through an old photo album or, took a little dive through Facebook's infinite, not infinite, obviously, it's only as long as you've been a member of Facebook, the photo album you collect of everything as you move through. I think maybe it is about time for that. It is good because you can see those memories from times where you were doing other things, especially now that we're in quarantine and all that other fun stuff. Maybe it would be good to check out some pictures of when we were on a beach or when we were taking that adventure or that vacation or some other landmark or place that brings back really good memories. I think one of the reasons human beings like stories, like art, pictures, look back, cave art, is that we have a very strong visual memory. We have a very strong reaction to those things. You don't always necessarily remember all the given details of what was going on, when a picture was taken, but you definitely remember how it made you feel. You remember, maybe who you were with. Journaling, music, reconnecting with friends that I don't normally have time to stay in touch with. Cooking. I gotta say, once upon a time, cooking was not an activity that I necessarily considered me. It wasn't something I was necessarily good at unless it involved putting a box of pre-processed things into a microwave container filled with water and then pushing a couple buttons. That was cooking for me, and it served its purpose. But I have found that over the years, as I've gotten more in tune with my nutrition, gotten more in tune with the foods that I'm putting in my body, I actually really do enjoy cooking. It is very therapeutic for me. It isn't necessarily going to be for everybody, but if it is something that works for you, especially now, I urge you, cook as many meals as you can. I've pretty much been cooking breakfast every day. Lunch has kind of been pretty quick and easy for us on the regular, but then, dinner too, just cooking every single day. And it's given me opportunity to experiment with some things as well, just because I've had a little bit of extra time, beyond my normal cooking window. Maybe I've got an extra half hour or even an extra hour, so I can do those more complex recipes, or I can experiment a little bit more. So just in case I screw something up, I've got time to fix it and or change it. Reconnecting with friends, that's a good one too, especially the people that they've shared a very special bond in your life at one point, and you walked very closely together, but just life circumstances and the way things are, you just kind of ended up in different places. It doesn't mean you care about them any less, but they're not necessarily on the forefront of your mind, just because we do tend to be very absorbed with what's going on around us. That doesn't make us bad people by any stretch of the imagination. I actually struggled with that particular concept for a long time in my life, trying to figure out how to stay connected, how to be connected, and how to not, take it personally when people who you necessarily weren't as connected with anymore, how to not be upset about that, how to not get so attached to the feelings and the emotions. And as I've gotten older, as I've experienced more, I've begun to realize that when I do have the opportunity to reconnect with those people, it feels like we pick up right where we left off. There weren't these expectations, there weren't these changes. So it's unfortunate that we don't see each other every day, that we don't get to experience the immediate influences of life with each other anymore. But we're still out there experiencing life, and that gives us really good stories and really good perspectives of how the other story has gone. So when we do inevitably reconnect, we've got some very interesting things to talk about. We've got some great stories to share. We've got some wisdom, some knowledge, and other things. And that's great. I definitely have been using this time, even just a quick text, to text somebody who maybe I haven't talked to in months or necessarily even years, just to say, hey, how are you holding up through all this? Are you doing all right? Things good? Maybe we'll have one or two quick texts back and forth, and that's it. Maybe we'll then plan to make a phone call and just chat for an hour. Maybe we'll set up a Zoom call and, we'll get to see each other face to face. It doesn't matter what it is. Reconnecting to other human beings is very important for us. we are social creatures. We are social constructs. That's one of the reasons solitary confinement is one of the worst things you can do to a human being. It tends to absolutely break them mentally and emotionally. And unless you're a sociopath, because there's, I don't use that as like like, oh my gosh, well, if you're a sociopath, no, I use it more of if you are a sociopath, your brain is wired differently than other human beings. And, that's the kind of wiring that can deal with that kind of thing. But for the rest of us, we don't do well with that. We don't do well when we're isolated. So actually, before we wrap for today, here's my challenge to you guys. I want you to think of someone you know, a friend, who's probably quarantining alone or doesn't have a lot of opportunity to connect with other human beings. And I challenge you to try to connect with them, either via text message or phone call or email or Zoom, FaceTime, any of that. And just remind them that they're a living, breathing person with feelings, hopes, dreams, emotions, and give them a quick little reprieve from what could otherwise be a very lonely and isolated time. So yeah, spheres of influence, circles of control. That's our lesson for today. Remember the things that you can control and be in control of them. Remember the things that you can't control and don't try to stress too much about them. Find your balance in the middle. Guys, you've been awesome. Have a wonderful Saturday afternoon, evening. Have a great weekend. If you're anywhere near me, enjoy the 4 to 5 inches of snow. And I'll see you guys next week. Oh, now here's the fun part. How do I close this out? Maybe I just exit? I don't know. We can figure this out. I think I got it. Yep, here we go. Goodbye.